All right, like Pete said, I'm Greg Baker with the Texas Department of Agriculture, and like to thank y'all for participating in this webinar today. And basically, I want to go over our laws and regulations, and probably a lot of this information y'all have heard before, but I'm going to probably try to give it from an inspector standpoint of view. And I've been with the Texas Department of Agriculture now going on 26 years, and we're always available if y'all have questions. You can call your regional office, and the number that I have listed up here is the regional office for the Houston number. And then if you got any questions about licensing, we had some licensing that were due this year. You can always contact that licensing number. And I work some counties on the coast, and there's another lady that I work up around the Hallettsville area, and that's her number on there. It's always good to get to know your local pesticide inspectors, especially if you use your license quite a bit, because they're the first line of defense, for getting questions answered and stuff. So, and also we have a website you can go to, the texasagriculture.gov. We have a lot of forms on there if you need certain forms for the applicator record keeping forms and other types of information. It's available on there. Or if you need to add a category, if you're commercial, non-commercial, or if somebody wants to obtain a license, you can send them there and they'll tell them how to do the testing. All right, well, unlike Extension, the TDA, we're made up of 5 regions, and I work the Gulf Coast area. Let me see if I can get my little pointer on here. And the areas I work is, so you got Matagorda County, you got Wharton, I work in Calhoun, and then Brazoria counties. Like I said, we work the Gulf Coast region. And as far as with the Extension office, I work a little bit in District 9 and a little bit in District 11. So we work quite a bit with them. And hand in hand, doing presentations, and sometimes we'll get them out on complaints and stuff. That's basically we're divided up into 5 regions, and now working what they call the Gulf Coast region. It's the purple area here, so you can kind of see where this is the area we work, and I predominantly work along the coast. Okay, basically in Texas Department of Agriculture, we have basically 3 types of applicators on the pesticide side. We have commercial applicators. Those are the ones that are hired, they come out, you pay a fee for, and they come out and make an application. And do we have any commercial applicators here today? I guess overall, there's probably about 6,000 commercial applicators in the state of Texas. And then the next type of license we have is what they call a non-commercial license. They probably make up about 4,000 of our licensed applicators. Then within that non-commercial license, there's another category. It's called a non-commercial political subdivision. And those are probably the ones that we see pretty readily available. Those are the ones like for your drainage districts, your counties, some of your school district employees, TxDOT that spray along the roads quite a bit. Those are going to be your non-commercial political subdivisions. Now, your non-commercial licenses, they'll basically be like if you go to a golf course, they're the people that make applications there, or if you're familiar with grain warehouses where they do fumigation, a lot of those applicators are non-commercial applicators. So they make up about, like I said, about 4,000 of our applicators. Of course, the biggest one we have in the state of Texas are the privates. And I think it's probably close to 29 or 30,000 private applicators in the state of Texas. And then and we have about 25 agricultural pesticide inspectors statewide. So you see the odds of getting inspected as a private are pretty low. And of course, we have the old certified privates. Now, if y'all don't mind responding back to me, do we have any old certified privates that are listening today? A lot of times, the certified private applicators, those numbers are real low. I think if they were, the licenses were issued before 1989, and so that's where all those have been. But keep in mind, though, the old certified private applicators, they're still good, but you still have to renew them and get your CEU credits, unlike the privates. anytime we go out and do a certified private applicator license, most of the people that still have those are usually up in age. So when we do go out and do an inspection, we always call and set up the inspection, to make sure everything's okay, so before we go out and do the certified privates. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick too, I was talking about licensing. Anytime that your license is due, say the expiration date is, say, April 1st, well, about 45 days before that date, if you haven't received your license yet, you need to contact us to make sure your license is going to be in. Sometimes you get a computer glitch. Sometimes you might have moved and you didn't give them your change of address. A lot of times that's what happens. The guy's license will expire because he might not use it a whole lot, and then he might have moved and he didn't get the license in. So if you don't get your renewal within 45 days to 30 days of when your license is going to expire, you'll need to call this 877 number, 542-2474. And also you can contact your county agent, and they can contact the inspector. We have a system where we can look it up and see if the address needed to be changed, or it says it was sent out, and sometimes it's a computer glitch. But the main thing you want to keep up with that, of course, you're being compliant if you're using the pesticide products that you need to have a license. But the main thing is if you don't use it a whole lot and say you don't renew your license, and you let it expire for more than 1 year, then the license is expired. It's not good anymore. You'd have to go back and retest. And for the people that haven't tested it in the last few years, well, since 2014, we no longer offer the testing. So you have to drive to these testing centers. And I think some places might be up to 100 miles away. I think that's probably the furthest ones in the state. And so that's going to be an inconvenience there. And of course, you have to pay for the testing fee, so that's going to be another fee. Then you have to go back through the private applicator training if you have a private license that gets expired. So you can see, though, there's a lot of problems that go along with letting your license expire for more than 1 year. So keep that in mind. And of course, you have to have it, to use the restricted use, state limited use, and regulated herbicides, which I'll go over. But, do we have anybody out there that was supposed to receive their license renewal and hadn't received it yet? If they fall into that category, just message us, and just give me your name and applicator license number, and I can check on that. But that's a big deal, though, to make sure you get that renewed. And like I said, if you got to do a licensing change or an address change, you can call that number on there, that 877-542-2474. Okay, one of the requirements that's required when you do have an applicator license is to keep records of what you're applying. And I know a lot of people, they've heard this spiel before, but as a producer myself, the way I look at record keeping is you're spending money for that herbicide, you're treating a pest, and then what you put out, did it work? Did I put out the right amount to kill something, or what did I treat, or what type of product did I use last year? So besides being the law, I think anybody that's in agriculture to make money is going to keep some type of record. Just like you're in business, you're going to keep track of all your expenses. The same thing. That's how I look at it as far as keeping records on pesticide applicator applications. So you'll want to keep the records, not only because it's a law, it's going to help you also in your production. It doesn't matter if you're in hay farming, you're in ranching. That's what I do. We spray different types of herbicides on different pastures, looking for different results. You'll have different rates and stuff that you'll apply. So if you keep all that information, which is required, it's also a benefit also to helping your production of your operation. Of course, these records, they must be kept for 2 years at the place of business, or if you're a private applicator, say a farmer or rancher, it can just be stored there at your house. Now, the information I'm going to go over, we have a form that's available that you can get on our website that you can record this information on. But for a lot of guys, I know a lot of the younger farmers, they'll have these electronic spreadsheets that they'll get through these chemical companies and stuff, and all the required information will be on there. Or some people will actually make a spreadsheet and keep that information on there. You'll have a lot of older ranchers that still use the black notebook, which is fine, as long as all that information's on there. And a lot of people too, I get questions about, well, what would I need to keep records on? You know, I apply a remedy or Roundup. It's not restricted use, but do I need to keep records on that? So I'm going to go over the difference between like the different types of licenses, which have to keep records and which don't, and then what type of herbicides or pesticides that you have to keep records of depending on your type of license that's required by law. Okay, now this is our application record form here, and I'm sure quite a few of y'all have seen this. And basically, when I go out and do an inspection, especially a commercial applicator or non-commercial applicator, most of the time they're good about having all this information filled out if it pertains to them. Now, a lot of time on the privates, there might be certain things missing, and so we have to, you know, I guess play the bad guy, mark the deficiency, and turn that in. But a lot of times, all this stuff on here is common sense. You know, you're going to keep your application date. You're going to have that. You know, something you might have to change is maybe might have to add the time started. That's always good. We used to have time ending on there, but they took that off. But really, though, if you're spraying a large area or you're spraying next to other crops or other neighbors, in my opinion, it's always good to put the time ending on there, because the problem is, if you were out spraying from 8 to 10 that morning, and we get a call to the office to say, well, there was a gentleman that was spraying at 11 o'clock and the winds were kind of high, we can go back and look at your record, you'll have on there I sprayed between 8 and 10. And so, like I said, it's always a good deal to add a little bit more, especially if you're in an area where you may or may not have, you know, susceptible to drift complaints. So, of course, you always want to have the name of the person who the application was made for. You don't have, if you're a private, you just put your name down or the name of your ranch down. If you're a commercial applicator or non-commercial, you have to put down who the application was for. Now, the next thing we're going to do is the location of the land treated. And that's basically just to let us know physically where that land is located. And I know a lot of people now might have GPS on their phone, or they might have a sprayer that has GPS on it. They might have a handheld one. That's a good way to put the coordinates down. But you need to put some type of information down that physically states where that application is made. So that way, if we need to go out there and look at it, we can visit with you about it, and you can go out and show us where that application was made. So if you have a farm number, or it had the field number within that farm number, a certain field A, you can put that down, just so we know where that application was made in case we need to go out and do an investigation and see that area. Then the next thing I see every once in a while, there's a little bit of confusion between the location of the land treated, if I can get this cursor to work, and the site treated. So the location is the physical location, and then the site treated, are you treating a hay field, a pasture field? Are you making an application to a pond? Are you making an application to a fence line, to a right-of-way, or to a certain type of crop? You know, either be cotton or rice or milo or corn or soybeans or whatever the crop might be. So that's what we're looking for on that. You know, what's the site you're treating? That's what we're looking for. And then the next thing is the weather information. Really, with all the technology today, that weather information is pretty easy to obtain. One of the sites that I like to use quite a bit is Weather Underground. Usually, what they'll use is the county airport located within that county, and that's usually a pretty good area to get information from. So it's called Weather Underground. You can just type that in the Google, and it'll pull it up. You can put your zip code in, and it'll pull up the nearest weather information. And what I like about it is it has a history button on it. You can go back. So basically, when we go out and work a drift complaint, say there was happened 2-3 weeks ago, the application, we can go back and see the exact time. They usually record about every hour, and so within the hour, you'll have all the latest weather information from that application that day. So you can go in and put the wind direction, the wind velocity, and the air temperature. Those are the 3 things that are required. And also, they have another website. It's called Wonder Map. I believe that's WUNDER map. You can put that in. What they do with that is your airports will be on there, but also these people that have these little computerized personal weather stations, a lot of those are connected to that also. You can, if they're closer to you, you can use those also if they have the wind. Some of them don't have the wind. Some of them will just have the temperature. If they have the wind and the velocity, they'll have that information recorded on there. That's always a good place to go to also, especially if you've been out spraying all week and you got to get caught up on your application records. You can go back and go to those websites, refer to those websites to get the weather information. And then, of course, you want to put down the product trade name. And I usually see some problems with that because what they'll do is they'll put down Roundup, or they'll put down a 2,4-D or dicamba or Weed Master or something. When actually the product with all these generics, it might be called something else, like dicamba D or 2,4-D amine or Rodeo versus Roundup or Envy. So that's what you'll need to put down is actually the name of the product that's on the label. Of course, every product that you're going to be using as a pesticide will have an EPA registration number on it. Those are usually located usually on the front of the jug, kind of down on the left-hand bottom corner. There'll be two numbers on there. There'll be EPA registration number, and then also there'll be what they call an EPA establishment number. Now those are going to contain some letters in there. So that's not what you want to record. You want to record the numbers. Usually they're either sets of 2 numbers or sets of 3 numbers, and that's what you'll put in there. You got to make sure you put that down because a lot of times with those trade names, there'll be some products that are similar, but the EPA numbers might be different. So that's easy to get. And then the next thing is the target pest. And so, I mean, you can be as general as you want, like say I'm spraying insects, or you can be specific, say I'm spraying stink bugs or aphids. Or if you're spraying weeds in the pasture, you can put the specific weed, or you can just put down weeds. But if you do put down a specific pest on there, make sure it's on the label. I've worked a complaint before in the past where an aerial applicator was accused of coming in contact where a guy had sprayed. And anyway, we determined there wasn't any contact onto the person from the airplane. But then the applicator received a fine from the application. Can y'all still hear me? I just got a message. Okay. Anyway, I'll just keep going. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. Anyway, what happened was he applied a product and he had a pest on there, but the pest that was listed on there, he'd put out 4 ounces per acre for that product. But the pest that he treated, though, the maximum amount was only 4 ounces. And so he put out 2 ounces over the required amount that was required by the label. So that was a violation there. Make sure you want to put down the target pest, and that's basically what you're spraying. You can put down weeds, or you can put down insects, or you can put down a specific insect. Now, the next thing you want to put down is the rate of product per unit. Now, basically what that is how much you're putting out an acre. Or are you putting down 2 ounces per acre on some of these products, or are you putting out a quart per acre? So basically that's what they're looking at on that. So now one thing too, if you're just doing a spot treatment, you can write down spot treatment in that segment there where it says rate of product per unit. And I would just put down the mix. Are you using a 1% mix or a 2% mix? Because when you're spot treatment, you can't really determine what the rate of product per unit is. So that's what you'll want to write down on that. One thing they've added over the last couple of years is the type of equipment that you're using to make the application. Now, you don't have to get real specific with it, but you'll need to write something down. If you're using a backpack sprayer, you can put that. Or if you're using a wand sprayer, say off a motorized pump, you can put that down. Or if you're using a boom sprayer, go with some boom spraying a pasture or spraying a row crop, that's what they're asking for on that. And of course, if there was an aerial applicator, he'd put down his N number for his plane, and that would cover the type of equipment. Make sure, though, you do put down the type of equipment that you're using. Don't have to get real specific, but if it's being a hand sprayer or a boom sprayer, that's what they're asking for on that. So. And of course, also you want to make sure you put your name and applicator license number on the application records. That just ties it into you. And one thing you can do is for private applicators that don't keep a lot of making a whole lot of applications, you can put these sheets in a notebook and you can put your name and applicator license. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, good.
Okay, well I'll go ahead.
We need our.
Continue on then.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, we're back after a little technical difficulty, and we were covering the record-keeping aspects of applying pesticides. I believe we'd gotten down to the license number and name, so you want to make sure you have that on all entries. Like I said, if you want to use a notebook, that's fine. You can put your name and applicator license number on the front of it, and that'll be good for all the applications that are made within that notebook. As I stated, if you have somebody spray underneath your supervision, you'll need to put down the name of the actual licensed applicator also. And then we covered the acre sprayed. That's basically what it's going to be. But like I said, if y'all are spot treating, you can just put down spot treating. That way you don't have to add that up. And I did go over the total volume of amount applied. Basically what they're asking for, like I said earlier, was the total gallons of water that you're putting out. Are you putting out 15 gallons or 20 gallons with your application? A lot of times, like in an aerial application, there'll be anywhere from 3 to 5 gallons per acre, sometimes up to 10 after getting some brush. One thing I'm going to cover here in a minute is a direct supervision affidavit. So if you're a licensed private applicator, be it a commercial, non-commercial, or private, you can have somebody work underneath your supervision. As I stated before, if you're a certified private, you can't have anybody spray underneath your license. If you do have somebody spray underneath your license, you have to show them how they were trained. So you can do the direct supervision affidavit, which I'll go over here in a minute, and you can print that off our website. Or if you're involved in farming, you can use the WPS handler card training. That will suffice for the direct supervision. Or you can have a sign and date a label of the product that you're using. And any three of those methods will work. But in my experience over the years, though, to me, it's good to do the direct supervision affidavit, which I'll bring up here in a minute. And you can use those. Like I said, you can get that form off of our website. These records here, like I said, they need to be kept for 2 years. Now I get the questions also, they'll be like, well, I'm a private applicator, but I don't use my license, but I hire a commercial applicator. Well, that commercial applicator is responsible for keeping those records. Then they're responsible for giving you a copy of those records within 30 days of when that application is made. A lot of times it's sent to you in the invoice. So a lot of times you'll get it within 30 days of when the application is made. That's what you'll need to do. Then you hang on to that application record just like if you made the application yourself. So that's how that works with that. So if you hire somebody, they're responsible for keeping the records, but they have to send you those records within 30 days. Now everybody said, well, what type of records do I need to keep, and what type of pesticides do I need to keep records on? Well, if you're a commercial or non-commercial applicator working during the course of your business, you'll need to keep records of all types of pesticide applications, regardless of the use of classifications. So basically, that means anything that they apply during the course of their business using their commercial, non-commercial applicator license, they need to record that product. Now, if you're certified or private applicator license, the only time that you're required to maintain those records if you're using restricted use products. Now, those are the ones that are defined by the EPA. So if you go into a feed store or to a chemical company store or to a producer's co-op or something like that, you'll see in there some of the jugs will say restricted use products at the top. And those are the ones that are defined by the EPA. Now, the state of Texas is taking a step further, and we have some products that aren't registered as restricted use by the EPA, but we make them what they call state limited use. Quite a bit of the products on there are ones that we use quite a bit. So the state limited use products, of course, they're going to be 2,4-D. They'll contain MCPA, dicamba. Like 2,4-D and dicamba are probably the biggest ones. Like you got your gray zone product that'll have the 2,4-D in it. The Weed Master will have your 2,4-D and dicamba in it. And then also, like if y'all use, there's some other products out there too that have the 2,4-D and dicamba. And then the other products that are state limited use is quinclorac, which is used in the rice field industry. That product is called Facet. And then there's also a state limited use product that contains quinclorac also that's used in the turf industry, and that's called Drive. Then you have two other products, well actually three, propanil, which is a herbicide that's used in rice, and also bromacil and prometon, and those are bare ground vegetation control products. Now keep in mind though, we get questions all the time. They say, well, I go into Walmart and I see they got these quart sizes of 2,4-D for sale, and I can go buy them without a license. Yes, that is correct. Now, the products that I just mentioned, the state limited use products, you can purchase those products, but if they're larger than a quart, come in one size, then you have to be a licensed applicator to purchase those products and actually use those products. And actually, your license has to be current to have those products in your possession. So when I was talking earlier about letting your license expire, if you have products in your possession that require a license and your license has expired, technically you're in violation of the law. So that's another reason you need to make sure you keep your applicator license current, even if you're not going to put out products, but you have them in your possession. So you need to make sure that you keep those products there. And then the state also has gone a step further. They have what they call regulated herbicide applications. And so basically the regulated products, which I'll go over here in a minute, but they're 2,4-D, dicamba, MCPA, and quinclorac. So the certified private and private applicator, the only time that you're required to keep records is when you're applying these products. They're required to have a license to purchase and to buy. So if you're putting out products like, say, with a Roundup or Remedy, something that's not a state limited use or regulated herbicide, then by law, you're not required to keep records on those. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're doing a tank mix, to say maybe Grazon P+D and Roundup, or 2,4-D and Roundup spraying a fence line, or say with Remedy, then if that application contains a restricted use product or a state limited use product or regulated herbicide, then you are required by law to keep those records, and you have to keep them for 2 years. But in the scheme of things, though, being a producer myself, anytime that we make applications with a pesticide, we usually record it in some form or fashion, even if it's required by law or not. Because then the reality is, if it works, then you'll want to do that next year. If it doesn't work, you want to go back and look and see, oh, what did I use and what was the rate I used? I might need to up the rate a little more. I might have to change the product altogether. So like I said earlier, not only is keeping records good for the, it's required by the law, but it's also good for your business and also for your production to use like as a guide for history. Okay, now I was mentioning earlier about direct supervision. So if you're a licensed applicator, not the certified, but the licensed applicator as a commercial, non-commercial, as a private, you can have somebody work underneath your direct supervision. So this is this form here, which you can get off our website. Basically what you do, you go to our website, and there'll be a thing up there, a little icon says forms. You'll click on that. And then in the right-hand corner, it'll say type of forms. If you type in pesticides, it'll bring up about 2 pages of forms, and then you can flip through there and get the forms. Like we have the application record forms that are on there, this direct supervision form. There's some other forms on there that I'm going to go over with. Basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. So you'll use this for the products that are restricted use or state limited use or regulated that somebody's spraying underneath your supervision. Then this training is good for 1 year. So basically, you'll just put down the product name, the EPA registration number, the activity. If they're helping you mix or load, that's also, you have to train them also of those products, or if they're applying the product. And of course, the use is the site they're treating. Are they spraying a pasture, they spraying a hay field, or are they going to spray a row crop with you? So that's basically what they're using that for. And of course, it's pretty self-explanatory. You put your name on there, your license number, telephone number. You'll want to keep 2 copies. The person that's actually making the application would want to keep a copy on themselves, and then they'll keep a copy there at the office. And like I said, that training needs to be redone every year. So if you can add products on there. That's what's better than this, and then sign the date label. That's only good for that one product. If you're using several different products, then they can use this direct supervision affidavit to do several products. Now, earlier I had mentioned regulated herbicides, and I'm not familiar with all the counties in the state because I work the Gulf Coast. If you live in an area where cotton's grown, it's more than likely that's going to be what they call a regulated county. So to find that information out, you can go to our website and look up regulated herbicides. And you can go to the regulated counties, and there'll be a list of regulated counties that are within the state. Now, what are the regulated herbicides? And as I stated earlier, they're 2,4-D, MCPA, which is not real popular, but some people do use it in pasture land. It used to be labeled for rice, but they've lost that label now. And there's a little bit of row crop activity that can still be used with MCPA, but mainly it's used for pasture now. And of course, you have the dicamba. That's usually like in your Fuego. There was a product that used to be called Fuego that contained dicamba, your Weed Master. Cimarron Max, that contains the 2,4-D and dicamba. So there's a lot of products out there used in pasture land that contain regulated herbicides. Of course, also you have the quinclorac. Mainly you'll just find that in rice country because it's a product called Facet. And like I said, there's another product called Drive in the turf industry that's used as quinclorac. And keep in mind, though, like I stated earlier, these products are, if it's more than a quart, then it makes it a regulated product. If you go look at a jug of, say, 2,4-D and mean, which is a 2.5-gallon jug, it will make no statement on there about what type of herbicide it is. But if it makes a statement restricted use, and that's the ones, like I said, that are defined by the EPA. Now, if we have any farmers on here that are cotton farmers with the new technology, where they have the transgenic oxygen herbicides tolerant crops, so when you spray your cotton, if it's the 2,4-D tolerant or if it's the dicamba tolerant, as long as you're making an application to your cotton crop, then you're exempt from it being a regulated herbicide. Of course, that new technology with the 2,4-D and the dicamba that's sprayed on the cotton, that can be applied by ground only and not by air. So keep that in mind. And also it states on there, do not apply when winds are over 10 miles an hour. Now that's going to go for all the, that's going to be required for all the regular herbicides. So in the state of Texas, anytime you apply one of the regulated herbicides, it can't be put out within 10 miles an hour of the wind speed, which is pretty on the high end anyway. What I suggest too is if you're making quite a few applications, go ahead and make that investment by like a digital wind meter. They're anywhere from about $60 to $70 to $80. You can get them where you have the wind speed and temperature, and some may even have the humidity on there. So it's a pretty good investment. And the way I look at it is, especially if you're doing a lot of spraying, you'll have a spray rig. It costs several $1,000s. Pretty good investment for $80 or $90 to have something where you can get the wind accurate with the digital readout on it. Also, like I said, it'll have the temperature on there, and some of them will actually have the humidity also. That's good to know. Now, these are the counties that are regulated along the Gulf Coast. So if there's anybody listening from the Gulf Coast area, anytime that you make an application in these regulated counties or the counties in y'all's area that are regulated, they fall under, they're called what they call a regulated herbicide. And so there's some things that go along with that. One of the things that goes along with applying a regulated herbicide in a regulated county is you have to get what they call, you have to apply for a spray permit. You can get those off of our website where I talked about under the forms, under the pesticide section. Basically what you'll do, you'll fill that application out. You'll send that in to your regional office that's located within your county. And so you can get that off our site map. So that's where you'll need to send that to your regional office, the county that's in your region. These permits are good for 180 days. So basically, if you're going to decide to say, I'm going to spray some my hayfield with a Grazon P plus D next week, and you live in a regulated county, technically you're supposed to have that spray permit before you spray. So let's see. I got a copy of here what the spray permit looks like. This is basically what the spray permit looks like. And so you can get it off our website. There's two types of permits. If you're going to be spraying several locations, you can fill out the top part of this. You can fill out the top part of this, and they'll be called what they call a blanket spray permit. And if you just have a single location, then you'll want to go down and fill out the other information about where the location of the application is going to take place. You'll just put all the pertinent information on there. It's pretty self-explanatory. You want to send this in before you make the application. What they'll do is you'll want to, like I said, find out the regional office which your county is located in. You want to fax that or mail it into that regional office. And so, and you want to do that before you make the application. So basically what you'll need to do is determine when you're going to make your application, then you'll mail that in. People say, well, how often do I have to mail them in? Well, these permits are good for 180 days. If you do a little spraying in the spring, go ahead and mail it in. It'll be good for 6 months. If you do some brush control in the fall or spray some winter weeds or something, you can go in and send another application in. They're good for 6 months. And once you get your application back, there'll be a permit number right up here, and the date that it was signed. And so it's going to be it'll be good for 6 months from the date it was signed. And now back to the application records. Down here where we talked about on the application record, was the application made in a regulated county or not. So you'll have to determine if you live in a regulated county or not. And if you do, you'll check that. If you're using one of the products that I talked about that contains the 2,4-D, the dicamba, the MCPA, or quinclorac, then you'll need to get a spray permit number. And like I said, it'll come with a number on there. And then what you'll do is you'll put that number in that box where you made that application. Usually what I recommend that is, if you have all your information, spray records in a booklet, you can put that regulated herbicide permit number on the front of that booklet, and that'll be good for all those applications within that booklet, so you don't have to write it down anytime. Like I said, a lot of people get frustrated with the paperwork because a lot of it's redundant. But you can go in and there's things that you can do where you don't have to repeat that all the time. If you're making an application in a regulated county, you'll put yes. You'll check yes on there, and then you'll put the spray permit number on there. So that's one of the things that's required when you spray a regulated product in a regulated county. All right, well, one thing that's changed over the years, and I know I spoke a little bit longer today because we had technical difficulties, but for 50 minutes you'll get an hour of CEUs. Don't have to talk the whole 60 minutes anymore, so that's one good thing. And then the person that's the sponsor, which is today is going to be the extension service, that roster that they have to keep that information for 2 years. And also, there's also a way where aerial applicators, they need to get what they call a human factor, and that's part of their CEUs. So they can get that in addition, to their laws and regs. In the IPM, they have to get what they call a human factor. And that's available through the extension offices. You just have to contact your local county extension office and see if they have that category called human factors, and you can go up there and watch that, and you'll get an hour credit for that. Now, that only applies to aerial applicators. Do we have anybody that's in the active military right now? One thing that we have added over the years is if you're deployed during your CEUs when they're required to be where you have to have them, if you're deployed during that time, we'll give you an exemption until you get back so you can get those CEUs without getting penalized. And so I think that's a good thing because I used to work, I worked quite a bit with some prison farms down in Brazoria County. And at one time they had a handful of people that was in the National Guard, and sometimes they would be out during the CEU programs or when the CEUs were due, when their license was to be renewed, and we'd work with them on that. But now it's written in the law, so that's covered. So if you're out during military duty when your license needs to be renewed and you don't get your CEUs, we'll work with you on that. So you can request an extension on that. So now, as far as the number of CEUs, that hadn't changed in several years. So the people who are commercial and non-commercial applicators, you have to get 5 CEUs a year, and out of those 5, you have to come from these 3 categories. We'll have IPM, laws and regs, and drift minimization. So today, y'all be getting the IRS credit in laws and regulations. And this is for your commercial and non-commercial applicators, what they have to renew every year. As far as the privates and certified privates go, it's still 15 years. It's 15 hours over 5 years. And out of those 15 hours, 2 have to be in laws and regs, and 2 have to be in IPM, which is integrated pest management. And like I said, today y'all going to get an hour's worth of CEU for your laws and regs and presentation. A lot of times, a lot of the programs that people go to, they'll have there'll be a 5-hour program, and most of the programs will have at least 1 laws and regs and 1 an IPM. So if you go to 3 of those over a 5-year period, you got your hours met. So there's quite a bit. I guess it depends on the part of the state that you live in. I know within my area that I live in, we started having CU programs in October. They usually finish up about the 1st of March. So I kind of like to call that the CU season. They have a duck hunting season and deer season. Well, I call it CU season. Starts about October 1st, runs till about March the 1st. Still amazes me though. We'll get several calls from private applicators last month of their 5th year saying they need 15 hours and where they need to go. So we see a lot of people at meetings. They might be at a row crop meeting one week and a rice meeting the next week and a pasture meeting the next week to get in their CEUs. So I guess as long as you get them, up until the 5 years, within 5 years, I guess you can get them any way you want to. And those guys that I see getting those CEUs, I'll call them CEU chasers. You'll see a guy, just raises hay, but he'll be at a row crop meeting, he'll be at a rice meeting, and he'll be at a grain handlers conference meeting to get those CEUs. So keep in mind, though, there is some options if you can't. Within that 5 years, you can't go to the live classroom discussions or this. You can get up to 10 hours off of correspondence. And what that is, we have some sites that are listed on our website that give CEU correspondence courses. You can go to our website, and we have several different companies, and the ones on there are all approved. And you can get up to the 10 hours during the licensing period, but 5 have to come to a classroom discussion. Then for the commercial, non-commercials, they can license like that every other year. So this year they could watch the correspondence and get their 5 hours, but next year they'd have to go to a 5-hour class. So that's how that works on that. Okay, real quickly, I'm not sure if we have any people that are actually involved in agricultural production, but there was a few changes in the worker protection standards, and I'll cover that real quickly. It's not going to last very long. Now, if you're involved in one of these agricultural establishments, if you farm, have a forest, nurture a greenhouse, you apply products that have the WPS language on it, it's going to apply to you. I'll go over it real quickly because I'm not sure how many people it applies to, but we did have some changes. One thing on the training, instead of every 5 years for the handlers and workers, it has to be, it's an annual training now instead of every 5 years, so that has to be there. And also, you'll need to keep the MSDS sheets on available also. This is just for people for farming operations or greenhouses. And so keep this in mind. Like I said, the annual training. When they go to work for you, they have to be trained before they work. And then those records of training have to be kept for 2 years. And then in addition to the required information that used to be kept at the central location, you'll need to add the SDS sheets. Let's say we got a question on here. So the question was, how long after you renew your license should you keep your CEUs? You'll need to keep your CEUs for at least 1 year after your license has been renewed. So if we come out and do an inspection as a private applicator or a commercial, non-commercial applicator, that's one of the things we're going to look at is your CEUs. Now, sometimes also Austin will audit people through the mail. They'll mail you a letter stating that they need to see your CEUs. So basically you just make a copy of it and you mail that back into them. And they've done that over the years. But yes, you'll need to keep those CEUs for at least 1 year after your license has expired. One thing that also has changed, if you have somebody working for you and applying chemicals, they have to be at least 18 years old. So that's something else that's changed also. Okay, as far as the worker protection standards go, if we do have any farmers on here, if you want to give me your name and number, I can go over it with you a little bit better. I didn't know what type of audience I had, but I wanted to cover some of the major changes. This is basically just talks about pesticide safety and how they have to inform their workers of applications that are made in the area. Like I said, this applies to the people that farm, have nursery greenhouses. All right, we're going to switch gears real quick, and I'll be through. One of the things that we do also as a pesticide inspector, we work complaints, and it's kind of the good and bad. But we take drift very serious, because you can do injury to, like I said, we have several types of drift complaints. We'll have the drift, we'll have direct application, that happens sometimes, and we'll also have human or animal exposure. And being on the Gulf Coast, we have challenges because we grow cotton, milo, corn, turf grass, soybeans, rice, and pasture. They'll all be located and adjacent, next to, not too far from. So we always have the challenges of the different crops. And also, of course, with other parts of the state, we have urban encroachment also, so that makes it challenging. And the types of applications drift I worked this year, this was actually a direct application. I guess you can kind of see where the lake is and that fence line, and then you can see right here where the brown spot is. Well, they were making applications to this lake. And what had happened was the pilot actually flew over this point here stuck out into the lake, and he flew over that. You can see it burned the grass here. So that was a complaint there also. That's one of the things that I worked this past year. This was a direct application, but it was off the target site, so that's what the citation was for. And this is some other ones we worked. This is one where they treated the neighborhood for ball moss. Now, I believe the product they used was 7, and the lady that called was the lady that owned the pond here, and they flew over her house and flew over the pond. And you can see over here there was some dead crawfish over here as a result of that. So that's why we were called out on that. Come to find out, the product that the person was applying was supposed to be applied to non-residential areas. So there were a few violations there. And that's what I talked about earlier with make sure you read the labels of the products that you're going to be applying, because it makes sure the sites on there are the sites you're treating. Because if not, that's a violation. And every once in a while, I'll have complaints with that. Even though it's the same active ingredient, it might not be labeled for your yard, or it might not be labeled for pasture, or it might not be labeled for a pond. it don't matter if it's general use or not. You got to make sure that you use that label. You're in legal bounds of the pesticide label. So let's see. This here was a cotton complaint, and also what they actually used a product where they sprayed a pasture and it drifted over on some cotton that was nearby. And so I'm sure if a lot of y'all live in cotton country, you've probably seen this over the years. This product was actually MCPA, one of the regulated herbicides, and it was applied. And the bad thing was a lot of times this cotton will grow out of it. But what happened to this cotton here was, you can see the leaves that were affected. You could see it was starting to set the bolls already right here. When it came time to harvest the cotton, the bolls up top, they all fell off, and so they lost about 200 or 300 pounds an acre, and so that was pretty costly. And this cotton was harvested before the hurricane, but it affected the crop quite a bit. There was also a couple violations on that. There was a label violation. You couldn't put it out, within a distance from the cotton. And of course, we got them for the drift also, because you leave most of the labels will have a language on there. They talk about, don't let this, product drift in a manner where it'll harm other crops and stuff, or non-targeted areas. So, yeah, but make sure you read the pesticide label of the products you're using, because there's a lot of things on there that you'd be surprised about that you don't think about. So make sure you always read the label before you apply that product. This one here was we have a little bit of effects here, and the application site was back over here. Let's see, this would be like facing south, and so the application site was back to the east. And these effects only went out about 3 or 4 rows out into this field. So we got a call on this, and we went out and we worked that application complaint. And actually, when he made the application, the wind was blowing away from this crop, but for some reason, the product moved, and it did get onto about 3 or 4 rows of the cotton. And I like to show this because just because you spray up to your neighbor's pasture or fence line or crop, you're thinking you're safe, being that close, you still might get some drift onto a non-targeted area. So always keep that in mind. Even though the wind's blowing away, the product could still move out. Probably what happened here was it was being put out with a big sprayer that had I guess about an 80-foot boom, and it probably swung around and probably pushed the herbicide over onto the crop. It probably wasn't a direct spray. It just drifted over from the boom. So, but keep that in mind. Now, if you're spraying up to somebody else's pasture, don't go right up to the property line. Keep some feet back, especially if the wind's blowing towards there. And I know the wind blows quite a bit, but you'll need to just use common sense on that. And most of the complaints that I work, probably 90%, are caused by human error. Yes, the wind was a factor, or they applied a product they shouldn't, but most of the time it's a human error. And like I said, I've been doing this 25 years, and yes, we'll have a handful of accidents. That's just part of it, where something happened and it's unexplainable. But 90% of the time, it's human error that causes these problems. Then I have one more. We always have some complaints every once in a while we just have to scratch our head on. What this was, you can see this was cropland here. And you can see these trees, they're out in the middle of the cropland, like smack dab in the middle. The problem was, the reason we got a complaint was because the guy that owns the land, he called in on the person that did the aerial application. Well, the farmer who pays this landowner to rent this land, he hired an airplane to spray this. It was last spring about this time, about last February, March, to clean up. When he made his application, it affected these trees. So that's what they called on. So I'm not quite sure how the case turned out, but I've never seen one there where the landowner actually called in on the farmer. So, like I said, we have those also. More like a dispute type deal. Then another thing too is, if you're going to hire a commercial applicator, let them know what's around you. So if you're going to hire a guy to spray your pasture or your hayfield, if there's some gardens around there, or there's some people around there that don't want herbicides on their property, or there's some houses around there, let them know about it. What this was a family that raised some green beans, and they had about 6 acres of them. So that's quite a bit of green beans. They sold them at a farmer's market there in San Antonio. But the guy just south of them had hired an applicator to spray his hay pasture, and it drifted over on these beans. And the guy that hired the guy to spray the hay told him, yeah, it's fine, you don't have to look around, let's go ahead and spray. Well, he didn't inform him that the beans were close by, and so they drifted onto him. So that's basically what I have. So, but anyway, you can see on here that these are accidents, and in the part of the state I live in, these are accidents that are quite common. So, but anyway, anytime that you're making a pesticide application, be aware of your surroundings, the wind, the direction of the wind. You know, is the product moving? If you're using a hand wand, is the pressure real high? You can see it drift off or not drift off. You know, like I said, these are things that I see during everyday course. You know, so as far as record keeping requirements, make sure you keep everything you're required to keep. You know, make sure you keep your license up. Like I said, if you don't get your renewal in within 45 to 30 days of when your license is going to expire, call us, contact us, let us know. If you have to do a change of license information, you can call that number that was up there on the screen for calling licensing, and they'll tell you how you can change your address and information. So, okay, well, I guess that's about all I got for today. I appreciate y'all listening, and like I said, I'm sorry for the interruption. If y'all have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in.